A big Thursday welcome into lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we are with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, live on Facebook. You can find us easily typing in lcpioneers.com/live, and also reach out to us via email, sports@lclark.edu. All of our shows available on demand, youtube.com/lcpios, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, different members from the Lewis and Clark College community as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play broadcaster and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark College. We are the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, competing in the NCAA Division III level, and an opportunity for our student athletes to get an experiential liberal arts education just 6 miles southwest of downtown Portland, our Portland campus, and a chance for us to compete in the Northwest Conference, too, against other institutions from throughout Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. And then with over 430 institutions nationally at the NCAA Division III level, a chance for our student athletes on a national scale too to compete. Although we currently await the start of hopefully competition sooner than later amidst the pandemic because of everything that's happening right now. Competition in the Northwest Conference suspended for the rest of the calendar year, trying to get everything started again sometime around January 1st, 2021. Today we'll bring in a senior from Lewis and Clark Track and Field. We'll talk to Logan Kyle, and second all-time in the pole vault at Lewis and Clark. He had a chance to travel overseas last spring, so not only will we ask him what it's like to miss a track and field season, but then obviously overseas study cut short because of the pandemic that sent things remote in the middle of March, and just get a take too, what some of the challenges are learning remotely, especially in an unexpected way with everything, not going to plan currently with the pandemic. So we'll talk to him in just a few moments from now. We invite you to get in touch with the show. You can on our Facebook Live comments, as I mentioned earlier, to email us anytime, sports@lclark.edu. We want to hear your feedback and have suggestions of future guests that we should have on the show as well. You can also find us via social media on Twitter and Instagram. LC Pioneers, our handle on both. And we continue to update our YouTube playlist, as I've mentioned at the top. Yesterday, Matt Seymour was our guest from men's golf. He's at the top of the playlist currently. We put those out usually no later than 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the day of the show, so you have a chance to watch those on demand. And thanks again to everyone who's been subscribing to the YouTube channel. Have a chance to share those interviews with more people. And then Homecoming at Home continues across the Lewis and Clark College campus, an opportunity for you to stay in touch with different members of your community, whether you're an alumnus of Lewis and Clark, maybe you're within the Lewis and Clark community as a faculty or staff member. We continue to have Homecoming at Home events, and that'll be big next week with Lewis and Clark Athletics, as we'll have guests on the show throughout the week on lcpioneers.com live who are members of the class of 2020 that'll be inducted into the Lewis and Clark Athletics Hall of Fame. And if you go to the Homecoming at Home website, easiest way, go.lclark.edu/homecoming. You can see some of the other events that we have going on, a chance for you to interact with coaches and student athletes sometime next week. I think we're looking at Tuesday through Thursday, some of those events on our website, lcpioneers.com. There is a link as well. And then Matthew Brown and Ramez Addy of men's basketball and men's tennis, respectively, were winners of the Invent Oregon competition. That article on the front page of lcpioneers.com. So with all that said, let's bring in our guest for today, a senior for Lewis and Clark Track and Field, excellent pole vaulter. We bring in Logan Kyle to the show. And Logan, appreciate taking the time to join us and make a way for us on a Thursday. I mentioned this at the beginning. Right now we're all kind of adjusting and adapting to the pandemic, and it's something that you've had to live through in a couple of instances. I'll talk about the overseas study and having to come back last spring in just a little bit, but we're about 6 weeks into fall semester. Describe some of the challenges that remote learning has presented, and some of the things that you miss most about the in-person Lewis and Clark education.
Yeah, so definitely the biggest challenge has been not being able to see a lot of my professors and peers face to face. As a student at Lewis and Clark, that's something I kind of got used to, having a small class size and an intimate relationship with everyone I share classes with. So that's been a pretty huge contrast, pretty difficult. And there's just something about not being face to face with people that doesn't necessarily draw you out in class. It's oddly enough more challenging to participate and to engage with your peers in that setting. So that's really been difficult. I do really appreciate the effort that all of our professors have put in order to make things as accessible as possible in the midst of this pandemic.
Yeah, I've heard that from other student athletes and students alike at Lewis and Clark, is appreciation for the work that's being put in, because it's not easy for everybody, obviously, in this instance. And track and field is an area that I imagine is equally as difficult, trying to figure out how to continue to stay at the top of your game, especially with such high hopes coming off of your last competitive season. Describe the pole vault to those who have never had a chance to either see it in person, or even, it's obviously difficult to ever even simulate that if you've never tried it before. What's that event like through the eyes of someone who's so good at it?
Well, it's certainly its own beast. When you get down to it, it's really made up of I'd say just about everything you see in the track and field setting. There's a lot of technique involved, which you might see in like the high jump or triple jump. Speed and the ability to move down the runway at a clip is definitely a factor as well. And then you kind of have to involve your upper body to pull yourself up the pole. Yeah, it's pretty hard to describe. It's absolutely exhilarating, I would say. Like being able to fling yourself through the air, simulate flying for a solid second and a half. But yeah, I'd say it's not really like anything else out there. Um, yeah.
Well, and you bring up a good point. That idea of flying momentarily through the air, because that does not seem like an exaggeration at all. And so, how do you get used to that feeling? Like when you first say, "Yeah, I'm gonna give pole vault a shot," what's that initial time like, and how do you get used to that idea of kind of losing control for a couple of seconds?
So fortunately, I had a pretty large background in aerial sports prior to my initial pole vault. I did a lot of skiing back home, worked at a gymnastics gym, so it's pretty comfortable in the air and in inverted positions, things that most people wouldn't think of as a normal space for a body to be in. But beyond that, like it's like I said, it's not really like anything else. It's an odd balance of feeling completely in control and completely out of control at the same time. Knowing what you're supposed to be doing, but knowing that there's always the slight chance of something new to come along.
Now, I mentioned second all time at Lewis and Clark in terms of the record books. What do you remember most about that particular vault that you set that mark, and how do you kind of go from where you are there to incrementally improving to possibly take over the record books down the road?
Yeah, so well, that day in particular was one of my fondest memories at Lewis and Clark so far. It was a beautiful Portland day, home track meet, and my whole family, extended family, a lot of my peers at Lewis and Clark all came out and kind of culminated into a really wonderful experience. My favorite thing about pole vaulting is it's not nearly as neck to neck competition like a lot of other events in track. You're not racing alongside someone to cross the finish line first. It's really more of a competition between yourself and your prior marks. So everyone out there is just incredibly supportive, whether or not you're from the same school or different county. Everyone really just wants to see their fellow competitors succeed and improve on their past marks. So that experience in particular just is a really fond memory. Just everyone was so supportive and saw how much that jump meant to me and really enjoyed it with me. So far as the upcoming season, potential for improvement, I'm nervous to say the least. It's been a year since I've even touched a pole, so it's going to be an interesting return for sure. Pole vaulting so much about just technique and having time on the runway and repeating that task in order to build some muscle memory. So taking a year off is not ideal, but we've got some great coaches and it's been beautiful in Portland so far. So I'm looking forward to some good practices.
Logan Kyle, our guest on lcpioneers.com live, track and field pole vaulter in a senior season out in Nevada. And originally, when it came to choosing where you were going to compete, what ultimately led you to Lewis and Clark?
So my initial draw was definitely just the part of the country that we're located in. The Pacific Northwest is absolutely beautiful, allows for so much access to the outdoors, to really interesting communities all throughout the city. And beyond that, I have spent a lot of time up here. Most of my family is from Northern Oregon. So I have a nice little stable base up here. Those were draws initially. And then after visiting the school and realizing how tightly woven the community is and how many opportunities there are to meet other people and actually develop strong relationships because of the amount of exposure you get, I couldn't really say no. And I haven't regretted my decision once. I really love it here at Lewis and Clark, and it's a little bittersweet, coming to the end, being a senior. It really sneaks up on you, but I've enjoyed every moment here and am looking forward to the rest of the year.
Now, you talk about senior year, economics major. I always like to talk to those starting senior year or even transitioning from sophomore to junior year, because then you really get into the meat of your major classes. What is it about economics that's drawn you in, and whether it's a professor or a class or a moment, what's really stood out about your experience on the academic side?
Yeah, so economics in particular, I had a couple of professors out of the gates my sophomore year that really helped me fall in love with the subject. They just opened my eyes to see like how I can apply what I've learned in the classroom to the world around me. And anytime you take a class and you can really look in the world around you and see that knowledge working, it's just really satisfactory. And beyond that, I don't know. I think every like part of our academic campus and every one of the professors I've had so far really does a great job. Economics in particular is my major, but I've taken a lot of courses in other fields and I've enjoyed every single one of them. I feel like it's the feeling that a lot of college students get, that whenever they take a breadth course, they're like, oh, I wish I had another 4 years to go down this rabbit hole and see what that major path like holds, because everything I've experienced here at Lewis and Clark has been done so well and has been really intriguing. But yeah, my path in particular is economics, and I really enjoy it.
Well, and I love to hear those stories too about how much people enjoy their experiences outside of a specific major. And then even as we brought alumni back on the show, how much those experiences have helped them or stayed with them over the course of their postgraduate years. I like those stories a lot. And that's back to that idea of experiential liberal arts education. I think that's one thing that Lewis and Clark does really well, is give students an opportunity to experience things within the liberal arts. And that includes overseas studies. So I'll ask you this question kind of in two chapters, right? What was it like to go overseas? Where did you go? Why did you choose that program? And then once the pandemic rolled around, what was some of the process of getting home like?
Yeah, so I ended up this last spring semester going to study abroad in Sevilla, Spain. Um, it was an incredible program. The way I kind of ended up choosing that location wasn't. It definitely was not very well planned. I just kind of realized the semester before that credit and course wise, I would be able to graduate on time and comfortably with a study abroad experience. But that semester was the only opportunity I would have. So it was a little bit rushed. And most of the programs at Lewis and Clark, most of the study abroad programs are, if not language intensive, they do require some experience in a particular language. And my only experiences were with the Spanish language. So that narrowed down my options a little bit. And then I wanted to be able to travel to Europe because when I was a little bit younger, a lot younger, maybe I think I was 11, I traveled to Germany and Turkey with my dad and got a little bit of a taste of that part of the world and really wanted an opportunity to return. So that was a big motivation in choosing Spain, going abroad. my time over there was incredible. We lived with host families in pods of 2 Lewis and Clark students, and I think that's definitely the best way to experience any place outside of your own home, is to live with people that live and breathe that area and know everything there is to know about it. So I was really grateful for Lewis and Clark opting to go that route in terms of our living situation. Little bittersweet with how early it ended, but I definitely don't regret any of my time over there. All I can do is look back fondly and hope that I can make a return at some point to finish what I started.
Our guest Logan Kyle on lcpioneers.com live. You can watch us 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. On Facebook Live, you can find us easily at lcpioneers.com/live and catch all of our shows on demand on YouTube, youtube.com/lcpios. Let's discuss the coaching staff. Aaron Campbell is the head coach. There's a variety of coaches who help Lewis and Clark student athletes in the track and field program. What's it like to compete for Coach Campbell? What are some of the characteristics that you enjoy most about the head coach?
So I have nothing but good things to say about Aaron Campbell. When I came here as a freshman, as I think a lot of freshmen do, I was on pretty rocky ground. I was just like a little bit lost. I had plenty of connections right out of the gates, but you don't start to build a foundation for a while there. And Aaron Campbell was definitely my point of stability when I came to campus. He does such a great job in terms of making sure that your training and your academics are well balanced. Always checks in on my mental and social health, and he's been a constant for me the last 4 years, and I'm incredibly grateful to him for that. And I think everybody on our team feels the same way. So competing for Campbell is always rewarding, because you know that he's put the work in, and if you've put the work in, then you're going to get exactly out of it what you want. And he's always there to let you know that you did a good job, that your training's been paying off, and that he's there for you. So running for Campbell has been an incredible experience.
And you alluded to this earlier, just kind of the difficulty getting back into vaulting, having taken last semester off and then with the pandemic. So as you kind of approach your senior year, when it comes to goals, both with the vault and just personally for yourself, what are some of the things that you're hoping to accomplish as soon as we can get everybody back on a track?
Yeah, so my number one goal is being able to balance, on-campus work, academics, and the athletics at the same time. And as I said, Campbell does a great job, changing his schedule around, finding ways to accommodate that. So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. Going into the season, I really do just want to have fun. I don't want it to be something that I'm losing sleep over how I'm doing, losing sleep over how training's going. I just want to enjoy it, be able to leave with a sense of accomplishment, but also leave with a smile on my face, and being able to think back and think nothing but good things about my athletic career at Lewis and Clark. Because so far I've had nothing but fond memories, and I don't want that to change.
Now, we're close to week 30 of doing this show, which is far longer than we expected the pandemic to last. But as you can imagine, going this long, our crack staff has just started to get questions from all sorts of sources. We go deep into the research here, and this question comes in from someone named Jason. Do you find motivation for your vaulting success from within, or do external marks, such as clearing the 16-foot or besting your uncle's long-standing family record, drive you to work harder and vault higher? Seems pretty specific. I don't know who the source is on this one, but what do you think of that question?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I have an inkling as to who the source might be, but yeah, I'd say it's definitely a balance. You don't do anything like this unless you love doing it, so it's a lot of personal satisfaction and enjoyment. And as I mentioned earlier, the ability to fly through the air is absolutely exhilarating. So that in itself is definitely a reward. Beyond that, there is always some outside motivators. That's why we record our marks, right? Is to measure ourselves up against other people. So it is actually kind of funny that I have a long-standing family record at 16 feet hanging over my head. I've got the Lewis and Clark collegiate record, which is at 16 feet hanging over my head. And for 4 years in high school, I had a 16-foot record hanging over my head. So that seems to be the number to beat. So I'd say that's the mark I'm looking for this year.
It's, again, just crazy how these questions come in so randomly like that. But you mentioned, the leg up, and it sounds like the family history is there. I assume that's got to be something that can be fun and can be competitive at times. But it sounds like it helped you.
Definitely, without a doubt, it's helped me. And having it in the family helped me get into it in the first place. So I've got them to thank for the motivation and for the start.
All right, Logan, thanks so much for making some time for us. And like we mentioned, can't wait to have you back in competition as soon as possible. Try to get everything to come to fruition. But certainly thank you for letting us borrow about 15 minutes of your time today on lcpioneers.com live.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
As Logan Kyle joining us on the show. Yeah, I got an email, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, how this show has been fun to connect with student athletes. It's so tough on a week-to-week basis in athletic communications, and honestly, I'm sure it's like that throughout the course of the department, and probably in a lot of different places on campus too, but I certainly can speak to it firsthand. Week in, week out, when we have events on the weekend, it is so tough to get anything in except the specifics that need to be done for that weekend's worth of events. And the show, the one benefit has been having 15 minutes to just spend and talk to student athletes, coaches, alumni, and then, as I've mentioned too, getting outside of athletics and having people like we'll have tomorrow with Professor Proctor, which I'll mention in a moment, on the show too. But we've also been receiving feedback from people because of the show, and it really is doing what the purpose was, which was connecting people to the current student athletes, the current coaches, and everything that goes with that as people graduate and spread out, or even stay in Portland but don't get back to Lewis and Clark. It's up on a hill. You don't go to Lewis and Clark a lot of times unless you were going up to the hill. It's a pretty fun deal, and so to receive that anonymous question from our sources was a lot of fun, and I'm happy that Logan was able to enjoy that moment with me too. So it's going to be interesting. I hope that he gets an opportunity, especially with no season last year, to accomplish the school record. Dion Mock said it in the last 10 years, was probably 2015, I want to say off the top of my head, and it's sitting there right about 16 feet something, and it'll be interesting to see if Logan gets a crack at it before his time is done at Lewis and Clark. That was a fun conversation. We have one more for the week, and that is Jim Proctor. He's a professor of environmental studies at Lewis and Clark, and he'll preview the Environmental Studies Symposium coming up later this month. The symposia are very big events at Lewis and Clark, and environmental studies is now in its 23rd year, I want to say off the top of my head. So we'll kind of get a preview of what that means, and it'll be exciting too, because this is a member of the faculty in an area of study that many of my past student athletes that I've had a chance to talk to have really thrived in. Environmental studies, Lewis and Clark does an amazing job with that program, and so it'll be exciting to get Jim's take on the impact that student athletes have had within that program, let alone the track record of students in general at Lewis and Clark. And then we have our week of Hall of Fame shows set at least 75%. Jeff Miller will join us on Tuesday, a Hall of Famer from football and track and field. Lindsay Harvey will join us on Wednesday talking about swimming. And then Bob Harris as well on Friday. And it looks like our Thursday show may be a mix of our two individuals going in for meritorious service and lifetime achievement. So once we have that finalized, as I've mentioned many times, look at the Facebook Live page, lcpioneers.com/live. And over the course of the weekend, usually by Saturday, but certainly by Sunday, we'll put up the 4 shows we have for the following week. And so if you want the exact schedule, that will be the easiest way to know exactly who will be on this upcoming Thursday, in addition to those 3 that we do have set. You can read more about our inductees. In fact, our Hall of Fame release is on our website at lcpioneers.com. So to Logan Kyle for joining us, to you for watching, I'm Ryan Goff. Thanks so much for having fun with us again on this edition of lcpioneers.com Live. We're Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Facebook Live, and then be sure to check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/lcpios. Coming up tonight, 7 o'clock, I want to say, on Facebook Live, we are going to do an encore presentation of the PioStream Watchback Women's Soccer Edition as the Pioneers beat Willamette last October 2-1 in double overtime in the middle of a key run of games that ultimately led to the Pioneers with an all-time best Northwest Conference wins total in 2019. We'll have an encore presentation of that, but you can watch it on demand right now at youtube.com/lcpios. So until we see you again tomorrow, thanks for having fun with us, as I mentioned. We'll see you again soon for more of lcpioneers.com Live, presented by PioStream. Goodbye, everybody.
We invite you to join us.
It's time to explore Lewis and Clark.
I think everyone should take intro to chemistry because the chemistry department here is phenomenal. Everyone I've known has had a good experience with everyone in that department, so I think it's a worthwhile course to take.
What is one class that everyone should take at Lewis and Clark? I really enjoyed Education in a Complex World. You kind of get to discuss all the issues that exist within education today, and you get to kind of explore that by going to classrooms firsthand and volunteering with children, which I thought was a really wonderful experience.
One class that everybody should take at Lewis and Clark is anything with Kundai Chirindo. I think he definitely changed how I thought about rhetoric and media studies and just education in general.
For me, it was international affairs, just intro to international affairs, because I think it really gives a good perspective on important issues around the world.